Dennis Schroeder, my boys. Oh man, I have never seen another player fumble his free agency bag worse than this guy really has. 4 years, $85 million was the contract that Rob Pelinka offered Dennis in December and in March. Two contracts that were very quickly, very fastly rejected by Dennis and his camp. And you look at this free agency, and it's been an absolute crazy 2021 NBA free agency. Some landscapes of the NBA have completely changed. But I keep looking into this Schroeder situation, man, and I am absolutely shocked. I've just never seen a player just tank his value or not understand what his value was at the point where they offered him the contract back in March. I don't know if it was his agent. I don't know if it was Dennis betting on himself, but there was some form of miscommunication that now has Dennis Schroeder looking at pieces that are left in free agency. Not that many teams have that much cap space to pay him the amount of money that he honestly wants right now. Last I had checked, and this comes from the New York Times, was that he was still looking for a 25 million per year contract. Now you looked at all the teams that were point guard needed, and they've already kind of situated themselves with the point guards they wanted. I'm kind of shocked that Dallas isn't really all that interested. He has a relationship with Dirk Nowitzki, who's now in the front office with Dallas. They need a point guard, but it looks like they're more concerned of taking on Dragic, who again was on an expiring deal, 1 year, $19 million. And I think they'd rather go that route, knowing with his relationship with Luka, than pay Dennis the amount of money he wants. I think Dennis really views himself as a starting point guard that deserves to be paid like a starting all-star point guard. And I'm here to tell you that has never been the case. And especially if you look into this season, I believe that he had an opportunity to max out his value going into free agency this year, but it just never materialized with the Lakers. He went into the health and safety protocols twice during the season. He missed multiple 2 weeks because of that, because of COVID. And his numbers, although they weren't terrible, I think a lot of Laker fans, as myself and a lot of people around the league, expected a little bit better numbers. Here's the other problem with Dennis, and why I think it's hard for teams who want to contend or want to at least make some sort of playoff push or playoff noise. I think this is why they're so hesitant to also offer him this money, because it's not his age. It's not an injury situation. You've only seen this with players that like tear their ACLs or their Achilles, but they somehow still end up with the money that they're actually wanting. Dennis misread this whole free agency thing completely wrong. But I think the main problem with it, and I bring this back, is that Dennis has never been a point guard that you can rely on throughout a season. And most importantly, he's not the type of point guard that you can rely on in the playoffs. Dennis Schroeder's playoff numbers are absolutely abysmal. If it was in Atlanta, OKC, in LA last season versus the Phoenix Suns, there was a game that he had 2 points as the starting point guard of the LA Lakers. It was one of the worst Laker playoff performances of all time. That's how insane it was. And a lot of players, they do get played for their playoff experience. The more numbers you put in the playoffs, the better chance that you're going to go into the summer where your stock is at the highest. It's why I think Cameron Payne possibly could have made a whole ton of money for his performance for the Phoenix Suns. Instead, he decided that he wanted to take a cheaper discount and stay loyal to the organization that brought him back to the NBA, because Cameron Payne was out of the league. Now this guy, he took a discount. He could have got paid more. It is what it is. But Dennis, he just never really materializes in postseason play. And I think teams take that into account. I think they see the way that he was in the best situation possible. Starting point guard next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And yeah, Anthony Davis got hurt throughout the season. LeBron James' ankles were taken out by Solomon Hill. I don't want to get into that. And I think people expected him to step up. I think they expected him to go from runner-up of sixth man of the year the season before to becoming a legitimate, maybe even possibly all-star point guard, because he's still very young. He has a lot of nice attributes. He's not a terrible defender. He can kind of score the basketball. He really has a slow release. It's not that great, but he has the intangibles that you want from a young starting point guard in this league. For example, look at Devontae Graham. I don't agree with what the Pelicans did in free agency. I honestly believe that the Pelicans should have just kept Lonzo Ball. The fact that they gave up a first-round pick and gave that much money to Devontae Graham, but Devontae Graham could put the ball in the basket. And I think they are just more eager to have that on their team than not have a point guard. Another example was that as well. The Pelicans could have used Dennis Schroeder. I mean, in my opinion, if I had to pick, I would say I think Dennis is a better all-around point guard than Devontae Graham. Hot take, maybe. You guys let me know in the comment section. But I honestly do believe that he is a better point guard than Graham. And they went the Graham route. They'd rather have given a first round pick to Charlotte to have Graham on their team than to sign Dennis Schroeder to the contract that he thinks or that he perceives that he deserves. And it's bad management. It's bad way of reading the market. And another team, look at the New York Knicks. I think Dennis Schroeder would have thrived under Thibodeau's coaching. He's a decent defender. Obviously, Thibodeau is a masterclass of defensive coaches, right next to Frank Vogel. I think those two are the best defensive coaches in basketball. I think Dennis would have thrived in New York, and the Knicks, from all accounts and reports, they looked like they had absolutely zero interest in Dennis Schroeder whatsoever. They even went after Kendrick Nunn, who signed with the Lakers eventually. But from all reports, the Knicks offered more money and more years to Kendrick Nunn than what he got with the Lakers. That was their other option. Then they backtracked and went back to Kemba, who, look, I'm a Kemba fan. Cardiac Kemba is fantastic. It's going to be very exciting to see Kemba back in the Garden. That's going to be absolutely phenomenal. I want to see Kemba Walker rejuvenate his career. But I will say that you're going to pick up a guy whose knees have been just completely awful for the last few years. His injuries have just started to pile up. The fact that they said, you know what, 2 years, 8 million. Yeah, he's injury prone, but the fans are going to love him. Cardiac Kemba, him and Fournier next together. We'd rather go that route than had somebody who's younger, healthier in Dennis Schroeder. That says a lot, man. That really says a lot about how people view Dennis around the league. I don't think many teams, obviously, they don't see Dennis as a starting point guard, but he does. The newest rumors up today was that the Boston Celtics are interested in him. And in my opinion, other than Isaiah, and maybe even so Isaiah, I feel like Boston's the place where point guards tend to go and diminish their careers. And I know Brad Stevens isn't there, and the great, powerful Danny Ainge has stepped down with his treasure chest of assets that was going to land him Kawhi and Davis and Harden, blah 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 blah. But I don't understand the fit with Dennis there. I think he'll do good. Obviously, you'll have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown next to him. I don't like their signings so far. Josh Richardson, Ennis Cantor, a lot of meh selections for the Celtics. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if the Celtics are in the play-in game next year, but I think Jason Tatum is so unbelievably talented that you can see the Celtics being around the 6 and like 8, 9, 10 range. I'm not high on that Celtics roster whatsoever. Obviously, there's going to be people in the comments, or if there's comments for this first episode, that being like, "Oh, you're like a fan. Obviously, look what you're wearing." I'm not a fan of that roster constructed as of right now. I think it's just very floppy. It's very like weirdly assessed. I think Boston is like just assessing everything. Honestly, I think Boston's just waiting for Bradley Beal. I think right now they understand they can't contend with Miami and Brooklyn and the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. And I think they're just kind of just sitting there being like, well, we'll just try to field a competent team that can make the playoffs and maybe make some noise and maybe be the surprise with our brand new coach, Uduko, and we'll see how we go from there. But I don't know if they are really interested in contending this next season. I think they're waiting for Bradley Beal, especially with Beal and Tatum in Team USA. I think there's whispers. There's whispers going around that's just something that might happen at some point. But at the end of the day, back to Dennis. There's rumors that Dennis and Boston might have a heavy interest in one another, but there's also reports that Boston might not pull that trigger. So it comes back to like I don't know where Dennis is going to go. All the spots that I thought he could possibly end up at have kind of shrunken. I think Dallas is an option still because the Dragic situation is sounding very weird. There's rumors that they don't want to give up Dwight Powell for Goran Dragic, and I don't think maybe they could just sign Schroeder straight up. I think they have like a 10 mil trade like a TPE to offer the Lakers and like a potential sign and trade. It's interesting, man. I'm very like I've never seen a player go into free agency, believe that they're worth 100 to 125 million, and then just see every single team agree with what the Lakers kind of perceived, and it was like, no, we don't want to commit for that many years. The only 2 other or 3 other teams that have available cap space right now are the San Antonio Spurs, the OKC Thunder, and the Dallas Mavericks. Can I see Oklahoma bringing back Dennis just to trade him in the trade deadline or sometime during the season when his contract is eligible to be moved? I could see the Thunder doing that because then Preston gets another trade asset like he tends to always do at this point. But I'm interested, man. I'm interested to see what else happens to Dennis. It's been like this. I've never seen a player just tank his value. And I think even the 85 for 4 years that Palinka offered him in December and March, I even think those were generous offers. I really do. I think that was his market value, and maybe even his market value overlapped. The Lakers were obviously very, very interested in keeping him. You gave up Danny Green, you gave up a first round draft pick, with the sense that you were going to be the starting point guard of the Lakers for now and the future. And obviously, things happened this season that just were outside of their control. The injury toll was just too much for that team to recoup from. Obviously, Phoenix was just on fire, and again, up 2-1 in round one, Davis goes out. Everything just fell apart very quickly as soon as that AD injury happened. And Dennis kind of just did not play well whatsoever. And I know the excuse for a lot of that bad play, even according to Wojnarowski, was the COVID situation. He was just coming back out of the health and safety protocol. But at the end of the day, it's like his stock tanked, and it tanked bad. And I think at this point, it's just a situation where it's like, where can he possibly end up? I kind of feel bad for the guy, even though, again, I was never a fan. I wanted to believe that he was going to get better. I wanted to believe that he had a future on this team to kill it, and it just never materialized into what it was supposed to materialize, and it is what it is. But with Dennis, man, I'm gonna make a prediction. I could see him ending up in either Boston or Dallas. Those are the only two options for me at this point. He might end up playing in Germany. It's just ending up one of the things. Like, he might end up having to take the mid-level exception, which is only $5 million, and take a 2-year, $10 million deal. Man, if he really wants to play worst case scenario, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a team that's willing to give him the vet minimum. I don't know who has the mid-level exception still in their hands to spend it. I mean, if let's say the market dries up to the point where he knows he's guaranteed not to make any money whatsoever except $5 million per year. If the Golden State Warriors call you and they have not used their mid-level exception, they signed Otto Porter to the vet minimum, which is a great signing. Otto Porter's healthy. And that's been the biggest question mark, not just for this season, but for Porter's career. If he's healthy, though, and you got him for the vet minimum, the Warriors, and if Quay's healthy, they're going to make some noise next season. But again, there's just a lot of what ifs. If Porter's healthy, if Clay's healthy, if this team could stay healthy, it's turning into like a rehab center over there with a bunch of rookies and vets mixing it together. I do expect Iguodala to eventually re-sign or go back to the Golden State Warriors. I think they want to make noise. I think they're still high on James Wiseman, Wiggins. There's still those Ben Simmons rumors rolling around. Be it the newest rumors that Ben only wants to go to a Cali team or a West Coast team. He has no interest going to Cleveland or Toronto. If I'm Toronto, I would consider it. There's a lot of Pascal Siakam smoke as well. There's still a lot of things going on in the NBA where it's like you might think free agency is kind of slowing down, but there's still a lot of questions that a lot of fans want to see answered. And that brings me to one of the first winners of the NBA free agency, the Chicago Bulls. Holy shit. Let me take a sip of water, but the Chicago Bulls, are they back? Have they rounded the ship? Have they brought this thing back together? I know they just hired a new executive. Finally got rid of Paxman and all the guys they had there that were just tanking the Chicago Bulls, which should be viewed as one of the high-level franchises of the NBA, but obviously because of his airness. But they've just since, for the longest time, they've just been in this mud of just purity and never just making it back to the top. And they spent their money this summer, man. They land Lonzo Ball, huge fan, been a fan since he was in Chino Hills, UCLA. Loved him when he was a Laker. One of the best defensive point guards in the NBA. One of the best passers, facilitators in the NBA. A really good rebounder, really athletic. Yeah, his shot is getting better. Not great, but it's getting better than from what it was his rookie season. And they get him for a pretty good, decent price. And they surround him with guys who could put the ball in the hoop. Zach LaVine, fantastic player. I think Levine is so close, or Levine, whatever you want to call him. I always mix it up. Is so close to reaching that all-star capacity. We're not even just an all-star, like a star, like a legitimate franchise player. And I think this Team USA installment for him is going to really elevate his game going into next season. Then they go and do a sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan, 85 million for 3 years. All that smoke about DeRozan taking the mid-level exception to go to the Clippers or the Lakers, that obviously was never in his interest. I think he wanted to make it seem like, yeah, I do want to win, but I think at the end of the day, he still wanted to get a payday, and this could probably be DeMar's last payday of his career. So why not bank into it while you have the chance? He gets paid pretty well by the Chicago Bulls. He slots into the three. You got Lonzo, Zach, and DeMar now. I don't know who they're going to play at power forward. They're probably going to play the rookie that they drafted last season. His name escapes me. I think it was Patrick Williams. If I'm wrong, Bulls fans, let me know in the comment section. But he's a very young. He can play the 4 and the 3. He's a wing. He's very long pause, but he's awesome player. I think I'm very high on him. I've seen a couple of clips of him last season. He looks like he has some intangibles. Like he reminds me a lot of a Mikal Bridges, where he could do a lot of things well. And in the small ball era, he could play the 4. You see guys like Crowder and them all the time playing the 4. He could play the 4. And then you got Nikola Vucevic, who is probably the most underrated center in the NBA. Here's a guy that averages like 20 and 12 a game, could shoot from the outside, good rebounder, post ups. Again, braces the court because he can shoot the ball. That's starting 5. And then you got the bench shooting. I don't know if they're just completely out on Kobe White. I don't necessarily think they are, because I'm actually a fan of Kobe White. I think Kobe White can score the ball. He's a good bench piece to have to just come in and put the ball in the hoop. But then they took my boy. Laker fans were devastated by this news, as was I. I understood it though. I get that. I was one of those Laker fans that were calling the Lakers cheap the last few days, which is a ridiculous statement to make when they just traded for a $42 million contract with Russell Westbrook. It's just kind of dumb to say. But they go and sign Alex Caruso to a 3-year deal. I forget I think it was like 35 or $40 million that they gave him. And the Lakers could have matched the contract. But I think at the end of the day, and it was a 4-year deal. From what I had heard, is that the Lakers didn't feel comfortable giving him that money and they offered him less, and what really sealed the deal for that particular reason was that Caruso got 4 years and the Lakers weren't comfortable going in for 4 years. Like they gave THT 3 years. Most of their contracts are 2 to 3 to 4 years. AD has the longest contract. THT technically has the second longest long-term contract on the team. LeBron and Westbrook's contracts expire at the same time. All the guys they've signed so far are all on expiring minimum deals. Kendrick Nunn is on a 2-year player option mid-level deal. So these are deals like you could tell the Lakers are trying to compete now, but also have open cap space when LeBron does decide, hey man, it's time for me to walk into the sunset. When those contracts come up Bucks, now you have a shit ton of money to spend with AD as your centerpiece, and THT will still be there. And he'll probably only be 22 at the time, which is insanity. 22, 23. The kid's only 20 years old. But back to the Chicago Bulls. Caruso off the bench, people just like circle him into the point guard slot. Caruso is more of a shooting guard, even though he's not. He's just a prototypical guard that could guard every single guard in the league. Caruso's defense does not get talked about enough, and that's the one thing the Lakers are going to miss the most is the Alex Caruso defense, where he's able to just to stick in front of a guy, stay in front of a guy. He's able to even defend bigger opponents. Like I've seen it in the Western Conference Finals, not this last year, but the year before then, the bubble. He was even giving a Jokic a hard time. The Joker was having a struggle because, he gets down low and goes back up, and Caruso's a phenomenal defender. And I like the Chicago Bulls. I'm not the biggest believer in Billy Donovan. I think he's a very suspect coach. They do have him on a 1-year deal. They only give him 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see if he could pull it off. I think they have a nice core of young, really good players, some really decent all-star level players in Vooch, Levine, and DeRozan, and then they got Lonzo right there. Lonzo and Caruso defenses, that's going to be hell for other guards in the Eastern Conference. When Lonzo and Caruso on the court, every other guard in the NBA is going to struggle. That is going to be, and I wouldn't, this is no cap, this is not a hot take. I would not be surprised that by the end of the season, number-wise, Caruso and Lonzo are the best defensive tandem in the league. That is no cap. That is not a hot take. Remember this, clip this. Let me know later on when the season ends next year, back in April, whatever. I truly believe Lonzo and Caruso are going to be the best defensive tandem in the NBA. The best defensive duo will be Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso. So I liked what the Chicago Bulls did. Really big fans. Obviously, the Miami Heat. Come on, Kyle Lowry. You bring back Duncan Robinson, $90 million, but it is what it is. You get Oladipo on a vet minimum. I mean, that what else can you ask for? Here's a guy who can't stay healthy, but if he possibly can, he's still Victor Oladipo. He could probably give you a solid numbers on the bench. He's going to give you a fallback option just in case Tyler Hero kind of struggles again like he did last year. Everybody was asking who's going to play power forward. They bring in NBA champion now, PJ Tucker, which I thought was huge, huge loss for the Milwaukee Bucks. PJ, although he wasn't scoring enough the ball, he was still a really good defender. And here's a guy that gives some spacing for that team. You're looking at a lineup that's going to have Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker, and Bam Adebayo with a bench unit that's going to have Tyler Hero, Victor Oladipo, and et cetera, and et cetera. I still think they need to make a couple more moves to fill out that bench. If I were them, I would sign somebody like Paul Millsap. I think Paul Millsap would strengthen their front court even more than it already is. But the Miami Heat, I really do think they're going to give the Brooklyn Nets a run for their money to Brooklyn. I didn't really love all the moves they did. They kind of got a little bit older. I think they're really going to miss Jeff Green. There was rumors that Otto Porter was heading to Brooklyn, but then he switched sides and went to Golden State. They bring in Patty Mills, which obviously Patty Mills has been killing it in the Olympics for Australia. There's a 40% three-point shooter, spot and shooting. That's who they need to replace Landry Shamet with, who they sent to Phoenix at the draft. I don't know, man. They signed James Johnson. James Johnson's cool. I mean, I don't really think he's going to replace the scoring punch that Jeff Green brought to the game. They brought back Blake Griffin. I understand that. He could play the center position. They still have DeAndre Jordan there, making, I think the number was 20 million, and they had an opportunity to get rid of him during the Spencer Dinwiddie sign and trade to Washington, and it looked like they were just content with having DeAndre there. I think he's just such good friends with Kyrie and KD. If anything, that's the reason why he got the money he got, is because they love them some DeAndre Jordan, and I don't think they want to let that go. So I think that's why they're keeping him there in Brooklyn. But I didn't really love it all that much. I do like what they did at the draft, though. They got some guys that can contribute. If they can contribute right away, like Cam Thomas, but Brooklyn's going to be there. Kevin Durant is a top 5 player in the NBA. He has an argument as the best player in the NBA going into next season. They're going to be there. They were a inch away from eliminating the Milwaukee Bucks, and they probably would have won the NBA championship. Without Kyrie Irving and James Harden, they came 1 millisecond, 1 inch away, 1 foot inch away from defeating the eventual NBA champions. They would have went through Atlanta with ease, and they would have probably destroyed Phoenix if by then Kyrie and James were good to go. They were on the track to make it to the NBA championship. So Brooklyn's going to be there regardless of what it is. They are going to miss D'Antoni on the bench. They are going to miss Jeff Green. But I do think they'll have enough firepower to go against the teams that have gotten better. I have Miami circled right now as the team to come out the East. That's not a disrespect to Brooklyn. That's not a disrespect to Milwaukee. And I like Milwaukee picking up George Hill and re-signing Bobby Portis. I do think they're going to miss PJ Tucker a lot, though. But right now, if I had to pick an Eastern Conference champion for the 2021-2022 season, I'm leaning heavily with the Miami Heat. I think they have constructed the Godfather Pat Riley and Caron Butler, who now has a huge presence in Miami, in that front office. I think they constructed the team that it's so suited well. I want to see what the rest they do with the bench moving forward, but for right now, that starting 5 is phenomenal. I think it's even better than Brooklyn's when it comes to just the way it works. Obviously, Brooklyn has the best scoring trio in NBA history, probably. But I just think constructed-wise, the roster-wise, I think they Bam, PJ, Jimmy, Duncan Robinson shooting, Kyle Lowry's passing and his ability to score from the mid-range, Jimmy Butler's defense, PJ Tucker's defense, and then you got Depot and Tyler Hero on the bench. It's just that team has some options, man. And I think a lot of the responsibility is just going to fall on KD, Kyrie, and Harden. And my biggest question mark is, can Kyrie and Harden stay healthy? Because there's been a few years now where they haven't been able to. That's the question mark. I don't have really that questions with Miami. Kyle Lowry kind of has a history of injuries, but it's It's one of those things, and Depot obviously, but just one of those things where it's like I don't know if KD can do it by himself again. Wouldn't put it past him. But right now, I do have the Miami Heat as not only one of the big winners of NBA free agency, but as possibly one of the favorites, if not the favorite in the Eastern Conference. The Brooklyn fans are going to be, what the fuck are you talking about? But that's just your boy's opinion. The other winner, not to be biased, but Rob Pelinka had himself a masterclass. I'm just saying, my boys, what Rob Pelinka did, man, with literally no money. Lakers only had vet minimum deals to offer, and the mid-level $5 million a year offer that they had on the table. They had no other spot. They struggled to even, they couldn't re-sign Alex Cruz, even though they couldn't match it, but they didn't want to go over the luxury tax, which would have been insanely a bunch of money. And that's not me defending the rich owners. I'm just saying that's the excuse that was given. I would have re-signed Alex Cruz, but it is what it is, and it's past. It already is. He's already a Chicago Bull. Thank God he went to the East. Bless his soul. Good for you. Make your money. Do what you got to do. Get your job security. But Rob Pelinka still built one hell of a roster, my boy. It was funny to me because they re-signed a bunch of guys, not re-signed, but they signed a bunch of guys that used to be Lakers. Trevor Ariza, running back like it's 09. Here's a guy that, when we lost him after the 09 championship and we brought in Ron Artest, it was tough to see Ariza go, but Ron Artest comes in and just filled that position beautifully, especially, because we went back to back. But Ariza, 12 years in the making, man. To see this kid come back to where he belongs in a Laker jersey. He went to college in UCLA, won a championship with Kobe. Now he has a chance to win the championship back with the Lakers and with LeBron James. It's a storybook ending for a Trevor Ariza career. Yeah, he's 36 years old. He didn't shot the ball particularly well last year, but he was a really good defender for the Miami Heat. All his numbers show that he's still a very strong defender into the perimeter and versus other forwards. They're going to need that. Now that you lose guys like Alex Caruso, you're going to need a more perimeter defense. Trevor Ariza is still a guy that could play the 3 position and the 4 position. And if he can get his shot back, he shot, I think, 36% on wide open catch and shoot 3-pointers. If he can get those numbers up to a decent amount, that's a great signing. But it's Trevor Ariza. Laker fans are ecstatic. We've been wanting Ariza back on the Laker like every free agency for like the last 4 years. Dwight Howard, Superman himself. Shaq's gonna get triggered somewhere. You hear it now while he makes a Papa John pizza. Superman, Dwight, back for this 3rd time. I don't know. What was the last player? It might have been Steve Blake with the Portland Trailblazers, but Dwight Howard's 3rd time with I can't tell you another player that's been on the same organization 3 separate times. He's running it back like he put on his hashtag on Instagram. I want my damn parade. Don't we all? We all want our parade in Figueroa. Dwight's back as a Laker. They missed him. They missed him big time, man. Montrez, as much as Montrez Harrell's scoring was good on paper, they missed Dwight's defense. They missed his still athleticism. They missed the fact that he could body bigger big men. He's a pick and roll guy who doesn't need the ball to make an impact. He's still a great rebounder. He's going to be phenomenal with our new point guards. He's going to do great. Dwight's just somebody they really missed. They tried to replace that with Andre Drummond, which obviously did not work the way many of us fans thought it was possibly going to work. Drummond's just the type of guy that sees himself as still an all-star level center who demands the ball in the post, whereas Dwight, he's going for offensive rebounds. He's battling in the trenches. He's setting strong screens and running to the paint. He's bodying guys like the Joker, like he did in the 2020 bubble finals, like he did it against every other big man the Lakers had faced. Dwight Howard's physicality is what the Lakers missed the most. Not just that, but from all reports I've heard, and this is surprising for someone like Dwight for years, who has been called this like a locker room distraction. From all reports I've read, that I have heard, Dwight Howard was a phenomenal leader and a great chemistry piece for the Lakers during that season when they won the championship. So bringing Dwight back in fold, it's also going to levitate and alleviate some pressure of AD always having to play the center position, even though he has to play more this next season. You're going to have a better option. Montrez is just a little too small to be the center. Andre Drummond is not all there to play the center. Dwight, when he is locked in, and at this point of his career, I think Dwight's just on that path where he's trying to collect as many rings as he can before the career is done. And bless his soul for coming back to LA, not having any hard feelings, because if you remember, last offseason, he tweeted out, "I'm back on the Lakers," deleted it. 20 minutes later, he signs with Philadelphia for the vet minimum, and the Lakers signed Montrezl Harrell. Now he's back in LA, no hard feelings. He's back with LeBron. I think he realizes that he just fits. He fits Frank Vogel's system. He fits Frank Vogel's defense. He fits next to LeBron. He fits next to AD. And I think him and Russell Westbrook are going to have some beautiful lobs this season. Brings us to the trade for Russ. Man, I mean, look, people criticize Russell Westbrook for being only 32 years old, soon to be 33, but then they'll go on and praise Chris Paul for being 37 years old. By the way, that contract, woo, $30 million when he's 40 years old. Phoenix, you kind of got swindled, but I guess that's the price it takes to, you made it to your first finals in over 20, 30 years. I guess that's the bullet you got to bite when the point guard takes you to the NBA finals. But Russ, man, you got to start putting respect on this guy's name. He's not a bad defender. People just assume he is. Russell Westbrook brings it on the court every single night. There's a reason why Kobe was such a big fan of him. That's probably the reason why LeBron James wanted him on this team. He is a dog. He will go after it every single night. He averaged 22 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists. I read a stat the other day that Kevin Durant, Paul George, Bradley Beal all had career shooting numbers. And I think Victor Oladipo all had career scoring numbers playing next to Russell Westbrook. Now, people are questioning the fit. I don't have a problem with the fit next to Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder never connected whatsoever. I think they connected, and it was a shocking number. Throughout last season, Schroeder and AD only connected on one lob. One. That was something that the Lakers mastered the year before between the chemistry with Rondo and AD. Dennis just couldn't, for whatever reason, figure that out. Russell Westbrook's not going to have that problem. Westbrook is one of the best facilitators in the league, if not the best passer in the NBA. People question the fit with LeBron. You got to understand, LeBron now gets to play a little bit of off ball, gets to come off the screens, cut to the rim, box out, set up a screen for Russ. It's going to be something that people are going to have to wait and see, because the fit on paper for a lot of media guys doesn't work. As soon as they signed Wayne Ellington and Dwight and Ariza, Wayne Ellington, who was a 40%, I think 42% three-point shooter last season, Kent Bazemore, who shot 41% last year from three-point line. And then for people to say that, oh, it's because he was on the Warriors. Dude, he shot 38% from three in Sacramento the year before. Kent Bazemore is a phenomenal catch and shoot three-point shooter in this point of his career. Yeah, his basketball IQ might not all be there. He fouls a little bit too much, but to be coming off the bench for spots and moments, he's going to do fine. They added a bunch of shooters on this team. And then the big one, something that I have been waiting for since 2011 when Carmelo Anthony told the Denver Nuggets he wanted to be traded. I was one of those fans that said, hey, man, at this point, why not do Andrew Bynum for Carmelo Anthony? Put Pau Gasol at the center position, put Melo at the power forward. I was all in for it. Didn't happen. Obviously, he gets traded to New York because he wanted to become a Nick Bowie. And then 2014 comes. Lakers meet with Carmelo Anthony. They were this close to get him. In the final three between the Knicks, the Bulls, and the Lakers, they missed out on Melo again. 2021, third time's a charm. Carmelo Anthony is a Los Angeles Lakers, 13 points per game last year off of the Portland bench, shot 40% from three. You get what's going on here. Then the big one, Malik Monk might be the most underrated signing of this whole entire offseason. 23 years old, had a career year last year, 11 points per game, I believe, and I'm not sure. I think he shot 38% or 40% from three-point line. You got him for the vet minimum. Kendrick Nunn, 2 years, 10 million player option, 14 points per game, shot 38% from three. They have now put shooters. They've surrounded two of the best facilitators in the game, and LeBron James and Carmelo and Russell Westbrook. Let me say that again because that sounds so sloppy. I apologize. Let me take a sip. They have now surrounded two of the best facilitators in basketball with nothing but 40% three-point shooters. Russell Westbrook and LeBron James are going to have the best fast break in the NBA. Every place that Russell Westbrook ends up at, OKC, Houston, Washington, the fast break numbers skyrocket. He has LeBron James, AD, and nothing but shooters around him. Rob Pelinka masterclass. We still have to see what they have to do. They released Alfonso McKinney. They have 3 roster spots left. I can tell you now one of them is 100% going to be Jared Dudley. There's no doubt about that. The other two, we'll see, my boys. We'll see. I would love to add somebody like Paul Millsap, Andre Iguodala, I think there's guys that could really add some intangibles, gives you depth just in case some other guys get hurt. But it was just funny to see how the takes went from, oh, the Lakers are a retirement home. It's an AARP. They're going to be in bed by 10 p.m. And literally, as soon as we get Malik Monk and Kendrick Nunn, the take went from they're old to how is this fair that they have a super team? How much money do they have? Why is LeBron always got to load up? Pick your poison. Either we're old and Russell Westbrook's not great, or we're a super team. Now they're Carmelo Anthony's. Now they're saying that Carmelo Anthony, Russ, LeBron, AD are a big four, and that's just hilarious to me. Yes, Carmelo Anthony is a huge name, but that does not make this Laker team a big four. This is just a masterclass of roster building by Rob Pelinka, and I think he viewed that he'd rather have vets like they did in 2020 than bring in a youth like Schroeder and Trez and just see it not really work. They did better with vets like Danny Green and Dwight Howard and Markieff, et cetera, around those guys. Now they're doing it again, and I'm very interested what season happens. Frank Vogel's got a hell of a team on his hands. You gotta see it to believe it. At this point, I don't know if they're all the takes that are coming in of AARP and the retirement that changed real quick, my boys. Some of the losers of free agency before I close this first episode off. Now, again, not a big fan of what the Boston Celtics have done. I'm a little bit disappointed by the Dallas Mavericks. I expect Dallas to do a little bit more. Resigning Tim Hardaway Jr., bringing back Boban. I thought they would have more interest. I think it felt almost like they were like, it's Kyle Lowry, or we're just gonna run it back. And I don't know if Dragic at this point is really going to make a difference. At this point, I think Jalen Brunson is a better point guard option than Goran Dragic in 2021, 2022 season. It just feels like that Porzingis deal is really holding them back. I really thought they would go after a DeMar DeRozan. I thought they would go after an Alex Caruso. I thought they would go after just something else because that Dallas team, as great as Luka is, and he's going to have a say to be the best player in the league next year. But as great as Luka is, I don't like the roster in totality, even with Dragic comes. So I really expect more from Dallas. I'm not a biggest fan of the Knicks giving Evan Fournier that much money, but we'll see if it pays off. They obviously needed scoring on that team, and him and Kemba are going to add that scoring punch to a defensive-minded team. We'll see what happens there. I just didn't like the Fournier fit, but we'll see. It could work. They have pieces. They have depth. They're adding depth. Some other teams I thought should have done more and didn't. I liked what the Warriors did. Again, Otto Porter on the vet minimum. Not bad. Not a bad signing. Thought they could have used Patty Mills, but it is what it is. But yeah, man, the Clippers staying very quiet. I think the Clippers are in this point where they're like, okay, let's give Nick Batum a 2-year vet minimum deal because I think honestly with the Clippers, I think with Kawhi not possibly playing next year, I think they're kind of just like, let's just try to make the playoffs and see what happens. We're really just banking for 2022, 2023 season, more sort of this one, because Kawhi may not come back. And on all honesty, I'm frankly kind of shocked that the Kawhi thing hasn't really like worked or been kind of fixed because there's nowhere else it can go. All those contracts are already locked away and there's really nowhere else for him to end up at. I don't see it. So I don't know what he's waiting for. I don't know if he's waiting for Steve Ballmer, Papa Ballmer, to buy him another private jet or another private house or whatever the list of things and demands he had the last time he was a free agent when he was leaving Toronto. If you know, you know. But the Kawhi thing's kind of weird that he's waiting. Kelly Oubre is another free agent I can see. I'm shocked hasn't been picked up. I think Kelly Oubre, he wasn't great in Golden State, but he's still young. He's still a wing that can put the ball in the basket. Look out for Justice Winslow, man. I think Justice Winslow, obviously, he has potential to still kind of rebound. He does things that you want for your 3 and D type of player. So I can see Justice Winslow getting signed really soon. But I'm excited, man. I'm very excited to see what comes up with this NBA season. Summer League is already going on. I feel like it's been nonstop basketball since the bubble. Remember, the bubble started in June of 20 or July of 2020, went all the way to October. We had November off, and then the NBA season started again in December. From December till July, there was basketball. Then there was the Olympics, and that's almost over. But now it's August 5th, and we got Summer League going on, and then we have September off, and then basketball again in October. I love it. It's just been a lot of it going on. Yeah, man. If you guys, this is episode number 1 of Shoot Your Shot podcast. You can find this on YouTube. You can also find this episode on Spotify if you just want the audio version of it and out the visual form. Links are all down below in the description, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this first episode, I will gladly do more of them. So let me know in the comment section. I will see you guys later on. You guys enjoy the rest of your night. Let me know down in the comment section who were your picks for your winners, losers of NBA free agency. Let me know about all the free agent signings so far. And hey, man, if you're Dennis Schroeder's agent, if you're possibly watching this video, hey, man, kind of screwed him. Just letting you know what happened. You should have just taken the deal. You could have been the starting point guard of the LA Lakers. Probably would have traded you for Russell anyways. But anyways, we will see you guys later on. You guys enjoy it. This was episode 1 of the Shoot Your Shot podcast.